Namaskaram. Hello and welcome, hardworking individuals. Today we are going to talk about a Prime Minister of India who, in his childhood, could not afford to pay for the boat rides, and so he used to swim across the Ganges to reach his school. The Prime Minister who, once when he was caught in a mango farm stealing mangoes with his friends, while all his friends ran away, he was the one who was caught. He pleaded mercy because he said that he was an orphan, and the guard there gave him a very good lesson, which he remembered throughout his life, saying that because you are an orphan, you have to be more responsible. Well, the Prime Minister who used to fast himself while he asked the people of India to skip one meal a day because there was food shortage in India, and he made sure that his family is also skipping the dinner. The Prime Minister who gave the slogan Jai Jawan Jai Kisan so that the morals of his army personnel are boosted and to stand with the farmers of India. We are talking about Lal Bahadur Shastri and also Gulzarilal Nanda, the only Prime Minister who was an acting Prime Minister twice. And for him, it is said that when he died, his family could wrap up all his belongings in a single suitcase. That was the Prime Minister Gulzarilal Nanda. So today we are going to talk about two of the very famous, one not so famous Prime Ministers of India. And we have already seen the time period of Nehru, the Nehruvian era. We have talked about the Cold War. We have talked about the non-alignment movement. We have also talked about the Panchsheel Agreement and the 1962 Chinese War with India. And somewhere 1962 Chinese War of India was responsible for the sudden death of Jawaharlal Nehru, who could not overcome what happened at that time. So we're just going to go into the details of it. But if you want the PDF of this classes for free, you can join our Telegram channel, Shikara Academy Telegram channel. And also, if you're preparing for TSPSC Group 1, Group 2, or if you're preparing for UPSC CSE 26-27, right now we have just started our foundation batch. So you can call on the numbers given below and book your seat as quickly as possible. So let's get started with our class. So as I already told you, we have seen the Nehruvian era. This is the time period of 1964 to 1966. There will be few things which will be continued what already was there at the time of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and there will be other things which will be new according to the newer prime ministers. But what was actual geopolitical context at that time? So the trauma defeat of the 1962 India-China war exposed vulnerabilities in India's defense preparedness. Okay, it showed that India was not prepared in defense sector, and China's first nuclear test also happened in October 1964. This also heightened the security concerns for India. Now, the nuclear breakthrough transformed regional power dynamics, and it also compelled India to reconsider its strategic approach. You should not also forget that in 1963, there was this Pakistan-China border sharing also. So we were also getting ourselves somewhere the other surrounded by this China-Pakistan axis. And the United States' growing military ties with Pakistan, including the provision of F-104 starfighter aircraft in 1961, also was pinching us that not only China and Pakistan, but a superpower at that time, USA, was siding with whom? It was siding with Pakistan. Now, let's talk a bit about Gulzarilal Nanda. He acted as the acting prime minister two times for the critical 30-day periods. That's June 1964 and January 1966. Once after the demise of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and secondly, after the demise of Lal Bahadur Shastri, There was some mysterious death in Tashkent. Still, it's not very clear what were the reasons, but then that was the situation when Gulzarilal Nanda took over. Now, despite the brevity of his tenures, Nanda's leadership ensured seamless government continuity. This was the most important point when you talk about his phase. His background as home minister during both periods positioned him well to manage the administrative and security aspects. And Nanda's approach focused on maintaining existing policy frameworks while facilitating smooth power transfers to elected successors at that time. When we talk about the Lal Bahadur Shastri's foreign policy framework, Shastri's foreign policy represent both continuity of Nehru as well as pragmatic adaptation to the new security realities, and his approach was characterized by maintaining non-alignment while he was also building closer ties with the Soviet Union at that time. Because Pakistan at that time was siding towards USA, we need to had the another companion which was Soviet at that time. Now, Shastri also reaffirmed India's commitment to non-alignment while participating in the second NAM conference, which happened in Cairo in October 1964. Conference was attended by 47 countries. Shastri saw its articulate India's vision for non-aligned actions, including nuclear disarmament and peaceful resolutions and other things. However, his approach to non-alignment was more pragmatic than Nehru's idealistic vision. He recognized the need for strategic partnership in an increasing bipolar world. Well, let's see the background context. The Nehru era 1947 to 64 had already laid a foundation for the friendship with Soviet, especially after the 1955 this visit to India that we have seen. Shastri inherited this relationship at a time when India was under pressure due to the Chinese aggression in 1962, and Pakistan was also getting close with the US and China at that time. The Cold War polarization made India's policy of non-alignment tricky, but India leaned on Soviet support diplomatically and military at that time. The Soviet Union strongly supported India's position in 1965 Indo-Pak War, while the US and UK stopped military supplies to both India and Pakistan. The USSR tilted towards India. The USSR recognized that Pakistan was moving closer to China and the US saw Moscow, so India as a more reliable partner. So understand one thing today when you see while Modi's era, you are seeing India is committed, more committed towards Russia. It's because of these allies, it's because of the fact that USSR stood for us while both Britain and USA ditched us at the very time of need. The Soviet Union began to emerge as India's main defense supplier at Shastri's time. Negotiations were initiated for defense equipments, and Soviet assistance continued in heavy industries, steel plants, that's in Vilai Steel Plant, and other public sector projects also. After 1965 Indo-Pak War, the USSR under Premier Alexei Kosygin invited Shastri and Ayub Khan to Tashkent, USSR, and there was this Tashkent agreement was signed. Okay, both countries agreed to withdraw troops to pre-war positions. USSR's role in South Asia became more pronounced, balancing US-Pakistan, China-Pakistan ties. India started moving closer to the USSR, and this Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace or Friendship and Cooperation in 1971 that was signed during Indira Gandhi's period, and this will also come to a great help when there will be another war with Pakistan in 1975. India still tried to maintain non-alignment and did not formally ally with the USSR. Shastri was cautious not to alienate the West. Shastri's sudden death in Tashkent immediately after signing the agreement cast a shadow over the relationship. How were the India-USA relationship at that time? So during Nehru's era, India-US relations were mixed. Shastri inherited this relation at that time, and the 1962 Indo-China War has increased US military aid to India. The US was deeply involved in Cold War and Vietnam War at that time. India was facing severe food shortages. This is the time when I said you that Lal Bahadur Shastri asked the people of India to skip one meal a day, and he himself was doing fast on Mondays and his family was skipping the dinner. The US provide large scale food aid under PL 480, that is Public Law 480, but it came with the conditions. US President Johnson Instead of committing long-term grain supply, he approved food aid in monthly installments, pressurizing India to adopt agricultural reforms. At that time, this situation indirectly pushed India towards initiating the Green Revolution with US assistance. That is the high yield seeds, fertilizers, irrigation technologies, and all. When we talk about the military and strategic issues during the 1965 Indo-Pak War, the US stopped military supplies to both India and Pakistan. However, since Pakistan was already a US ally, it was already helped, it was already having the weapons and the other materials required. This created bitterness in India towards the US. And Shastri maintained a cautious approach with the US. And later on, when the US requested support from India in the Vietnam War, against North Vietnam backed by USSR and China, Shastri refused to support US military intervention, instead advocating for peace at that time. And this further limited Indo-US strategy at that time. Now, India-Pakistan relation, how it was. So, Kashmir issue was always there. We have already discussed in our last class, 1947-48 war. Then water dispute was resolved by the Indus Water Treaty. We have seen, and Pakistan's close alignment with US-led military blocs, which gave it advanced weapons. Now, Pakistan's growing closeness with China, especially after the 1962 Sino-Indo War, and when Shastri became PM in June 1964, Pakistan thought that this is the real time when we should attack over India, because it thought that 1962 China has already defeated India. Now Nehru is also not there. They were already not prepared at the time of Chinese war attack. So this is the chance that we can take advantage and we can take Kashmir. So what will happen? All of this will start with the small border dispute in the run of Kutch. And here what will happen? Britain will broker a ceasefire at that time, but Pakistan will misunderstand. It will think that, oh, they are taking the help of Britain. Now is the time to attack. Pakistan sent thousands of infiltrators into Jammu and Kashmir to incite local uprising. But that did not happen because the locals did not support Pakistan at that time. Now, what will happen? Operation Grand Slam will be launched. Pakistan launched a direct attack in Sham and Akhnur sector in Jammu and Kashmir. This escalated the conflict. But here was a master stroke by Lal Bahadur Shastri. What Lal Bahadur Shastri will do? He will give the army and air force full freedom of action, and Indian forces will cross the international border near Lahore and Sialkot. So Pakistan is fighting in Jammu and Kashmir. Most of its forces is where? In Jammu and Kashmir. And India has now directly crossed the international line and it has reached to Lahore at that time. Our battles took place at Asal Uttar, where Indian forces destroyed many Pakistani Patton tanks, hence called the graveyard of Pattons at that time. Both countries suffered heavy losses. Neither side achieved a decisive military victory, but India successfully defended Kashmir and stopped Pakistan's invasion, boosting Indian morale. So it was a victory for India because we were able to throw them back out of Kashmir and we also reached till Lahore. Shastri's leadership earned him great respect at the time, and the UN Security Council called for a ceasefire. The Soviet Union mediated the peace talks and the Tashkent Agreement, that is on 10 January 1966. Both sides agreed to withdraw. Now, this is the Indian map, and this is the disputed area of Kashmir that you can see, which is claimed by Pakistan, this area that you are seeing. And this is the disputed area which is under the Chinese. Okay, so this is something that you should know. The Tashkent Agreement, the Tashkent Declaration signed on 10 January 1966, mediated by Soviet Union. Premier at that time was Kozhin. The key provisions were that the withdrawal of the forces will be there, and there were some other things like the transfer of the prisoners of war. While criticized for not securing a no war pact or Pakistani renunciation of support for Kashmir insurgency, the agreement prevented further escalation. Now, here was something very sad that happened. Lal Bahadur Shastri died of heart attack just one day, 10th January. He signed the Tashkent Agreement. On 11th January 1966, he died. His sudden death still remains surrounded by mystery and speculation. With that, we'll also see how was the Indo-China relation post 1962. It was not that very good, though we have already seen that India, recognized the PRC. It also advocated for the UN permanent seat, culminated all the everything was not that very good between India and China. And by the time Shastri became PM June 1964, relations with China were very bitter. Now, border dispute were continuing at that time. There was a problem in Askai Chin as well as in Andhra Pradesh area. China openly supported Pakistan against India. And this I've already said you that in 1963 there was this border agreement with China and Pakistan, and during 1965 Indo-Pak war, China issued statements condemning India and threatening interventions, and no improvement in relations during the Shastri's era that we have seen. So India began moving closer towards USSR during Shastri's period, especially after Tashkent 1966, partly to counter China at that time. Now let's talk about India, Sri Lanka at that time. So I have already said you Sri Lanka at that time was Ceylon, and there was this problem of the Indian Tamil. So Indian Tamil in Sri Lanka were descendants of the laborers taken by the British from Tamil Nadu to work in tea, coffee and rubber plantation. After Sri Lanka's independence in 1948, many Indians Tamils were denied citizenships. Okay, because of that, what happened? There was this problem with the Sinhalese of Sri Lanka and Indian Tamils. So, because of that, there will be this Srimavo Bandar Naike. She was the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka and world's first women Prime Minister. This is something that you should note down. And Lal Bahadur Shastri, this pact on October 30, 1964 represented a significant diplomatic achievement where they addressed the status of this issue of Tamilians and the Sinhalese, and the relations remained generally friendly despite the Tamil issue. And we'll also see the Tamil citizenship issue remained a sensitive point in bilateral relations, and it will continue for a very long time. And India Burma also, if we'll see, despite strained relations following the 1962 military coup and subsequent reparation, Nevin's government introduced strict nationalization policies which took over many Indian owned businesses. But Shastri's official visit to Rangoon in December 1965 successfully re-established cordial relations with General Nee, and this visit demonstrated Shastri's pragmatic approach to regional diplomacy at that time. Now, I have already told you about the self-reliance and food crisis management. So, Shastri, a very famous way, talked about sacrifice one meal at least a week during the 1965 war, and however the crisis necessitated continued reliance on PL 480 food aid from the United States at that time. So, I've already talked about this PL 480 agreement where US was giving us this wheat, but it was something which was not given for the long term, rather in short term, and that also they were blackmailing us. So Shastri's approach to economic self-reliance centered on this quote, Jai Jawan Jai Kisan slogan, emphasized both defense and agricultural development, and he supported the early phases of the green revolution at that time, and that laid the foundation of the eventual food self-sufficiency at that time. Now, defense modernization and nuclear policy is also something that is credited to Lal Bahadur Shastri. 1964 defense agreement with the USSR marked the beginning of India's largest military partnership. This MiG-21 fighter jets, PT-76 amphibian tanks, 123 mm medium guns, and the surface-to-air missiles and radar system, all of this, almost 70% of Indian military inventory by the Cold War's end was of Russia or the Soviet at that time, that you can say. And also after the nuclear test of China in 1964, India was also working towards it. Homi Bhabha advocated for nuclear weapons, and it was supported by Lal Bahadur Shastri at that time. Shastri initially opposed nuclear weapons but was convinced by Bhabha to support peaceful nuclear explosion, and Shastri authorized the subterranean nuclear explosion project in 1965, though both he and Bhabha died in January 1966, leaving the program to be completed by Indira Gandhi at that time. So at the end, we can say that of Gulzarilal Nanda, it's not a lot of thing that can be said, but he was an honest man, that we can say. But for Lal Bahadur Shastri, there were lot many things that we can learn from him, and he really played a very strong role. He was not of very height. His height was not that very long, but his stature in Indian politics will remain very, very high forever. Let's see few questions. Which in the agreement signed during Lal Bahadur Shastri tenure as Prime Minister address the status of people of Indian origin? This we have seen. Srima Shastri Pact, Srimabu Vandanaike. Okay, you can pause the video and see the explanation. And by the way, if you want the PDF of this classes, you can join our Telegram channel and you'll get it for free. And also, if you have any question for any of the educator, you can call on the numbers given below and you can ask your questions for free. Which of the following best describe India's foreign policy stance during the leaders of Lal Bahadur Shastri? Pragmatic non-alignment with increased defense ties with the USSR is the correct answer. Again, you can pause the video. The Tashkent Agreement of 1966 related to Indo-Pak War was mediated by which world power? Obviously, it was done by Soviet Union and it was signed in Tashkent at that time. Next question, what was Lal Bahadur Shastri's major slogan? We have already seen Jai Jawan Jai Kisan was his major slogan. And the last but not the least, what was the main objective of India's policy continuity under acting Prime Minister Gulzarilal Nanda? Well, maintaining stability and seamless policy transition is something that was Gulzarilal Nanda's at that time. So with that, we have come to the end of this class. But if you are a serious aspirant and you really want to shorten your journey from administrative from an aspirant to the administrative officer, this is the chance to get one-on-one live mentorship by Deepika ma'am, who is having 20 plus years of experience and who has guided hundreds of aspirants into civil services. So you should not waste your time. Call on the numbers given below so that you get started with your journey. Like it if you really like the video. Subscribe so that we meet again and keep working hard. You'll be successful for sure. Thank you so much.